My daughter called from her school. Mom, the principal is suspending me for vandalism I didn't do, and they have a witness who says they saw me. When I walked into the office, the principal's confident smile vanished and she stammered, "Chief Investigator, I had no idea she was yours." The call came at 2:17 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon while I was reviewing surveillance footage from a charter school in the Northern District. My daughter Riley's name flashed on my screen, and I almost didn't answer because she knew I was working, but something in my gut made me pick up. "Mom, you need to come to school right now." Her voice was shaking, that specific tremor that meant she was trying not to cry in public. "Principal Blackwell is suspending me for 3 weeks. She says I spray painted the gym walls last night and there's a witness who saw me do it. But Mom, I swear to God, I didn't do anything. I was home with you all night." I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "Riley, slow down. What witness? Who's accusing you?" "Madison Thorne. She says she saw me in the gym at 9 p.m. with spray paint cans. But I wasn't there, Mom. You know I wasn't there. We watched that documentary about the college admissions scandal together. Remember? We made popcorn." I remembered. We'd been on the couch until almost 11, and Riley had fallen asleep during the credits. I'd woken her up to go to bed around 11:30. There was absolutely no way she'd been at school vandalizing anything. "Don't say another word," I said, already grabbing my jacket and badge. "Don't sign anything. Don't admit to anything. Don't let them intimidate you. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm Victoria Hayes, 41 years old, Chief Investigator for the State Department of Education's Fraud and Compliance Division. I've held this position for 6 years, investigating everything from embezzlement and bid rigging to falsified test scores and credential fraud. Before that, I spent 9 years as a forensic accountant with the FBI's white-collar crime unit. I know how to follow money, how to spot inconsistencies in documentation, and how to recognize when someone is lying to cover up something bigger. My job has made me naturally suspicious of institutional authority, especially in schools where the power dynamics are so skewed and the oversight is often minimal. I've seen superintendents steal millions, principals manipulate enrollment numbers for funding, teachers falsify grades to boost school ratings. The education system, for all its noble intentions, is riddled with people who abuse their positions for personal gain. Riley knew what I did for a living. She'd grown up listening to me talk about cases over dinner, understanding that accountability mattered, and that telling the truth was non-negotiable. She was 16, a junior at Riverside Academy, honor roll every semester since 6th grade, varsity soccer, debate team, volunteer work at the community food bank on weekends. She'd never been in trouble, never even had a detention. The idea that she'd vandalize school property was absurd. But as I drove toward Riverside Academy, my hands tight on the steering wheel, I felt something nagging at the back of my mind. Madison Thorne. That name was familiar, though I couldn't immediately place why. Riverside Academy was one of the top-ranked public high schools in the state, nestled in an affluent suburb with manicured lawns and a campus that looked more like a private college than a public school. The building was modern, all glass and steel, with a state-of-the-art athletic facility that had been completed 2 years ago at a cost of $18 million. I'd actually reviewed the construction contracts as part of a routine audit when the project went over budget, but everything had checked out. No fraud, just the usual cost overruns that came with ambitious municipal projects. I parked in the visitor lot and walked through the main entrance at 2:33 p.m. The administrative assistant at the front desk, a young woman named Claire who I'd met at a few school events, looked up with wide eyes. "Miss Hayes, they're waiting for you in the principal's office. Riley's already in there." I nodded and headed down the hallway, my heels clicking against the polished tile floor. Through the glass walls of the main office, I could see Riley sitting in one of the chairs outside Principal Blackwell's private office. Her face was blotchy from crying, her arms wrapped around herself. When she saw me, relief flooded her expression. I pushed open the door and went straight to her. "Are you okay?" She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "They won't let me explain. They just keep saying Madison saw me and that's all the proof they need." Before I could respond, the door to the principal's office opened and Dr. Catherine Blackwell stepped out. She was 53, had been principal of Riverside for 8 years, and had a reputation for running a tight ship. She wore expensive suits and had her salt and pepper hair cut in a severe bob that made her look perpetually stern. She started to speak, her expression confident, almost smug. "Miss Hayes, thank you for coming so quickly. I know this must be difficult, but we have a zero-tolerance policy for vandalism and..." Then she actually looked at me, and I watched the color drain from her face. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Chief Investigator Hayes," she stammered, her previous confidence evaporating. I had no idea Riley was your daughter. She uses a different last name at school." "My ex-husband's name," I said coldly. "Riley Cooper. But that doesn't change the facts of this situation. You're accusing my daughter of vandalism based on what, exactly? The word of another student?" Dr. Blackwell recovered slightly, straightening her shoulders. "We have a credible witness, Miss Hayes. Madison Thorne is a trustworthy student, a senior, member of student council. She has no reason to lie. She reported seeing Riley in the gymnasium last night at approximately 9 p.m. with several cans of spray paint. This morning we discovered extensive vandalism in the gym, profane language, offensive imagery, damage that will cost thousands of dollars to repair. And you've confirmed Riley was actually at school last night? You've reviewed security footage? Dr. Blackwell hesitated. The security system in the gymnasium has been experiencing technical difficulties. The cameras weren't recording last night. How convenient. So you have no physical evidence, no video footage, just the accusation of one student against another. And based solely on that, you're suspending my daughter for 3 weeks? Madison is very reliable, Dr. Blackwell said defensively, and she was quite specific in her account. She described Riley's clothing, mentioned that Riley was wearing the green Riverside soccer sweatshirt. Riley was on the soccer team, correct? I looked at Riley. Do you own a green soccer sweatshirt? She nodded. Everyone on the team does. Coach gave them to us at the beginning of the season. There are like 30 of them. I turned back to Dr. Blackwell. So your witness saw someone in clothing that 30 students own, in a gym with non-functioning security cameras, and you've decided it was Riley. Have you questioned the other 29 students who own that same sweatshirt? Dr. Blackwell's jaw tightened. Miss Hayes, I understand you want to defend your daughter, but Madison was very clear about what she saw. She identified Riley specifically. Based on what? Did she see Riley's face clearly? Did they speak to each other? Or did she see someone from a distance wearing common athletic clothing and decided it was Riley? She saw her face, Dr. Blackwell insisted. She was certain. I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar app, turning the screen toward Dr. Blackwell. Riley was home with me last night from 6 p.m. until after 11. We watched a documentary together. I can provide you with our streaming account history showing exactly what time we started watching and finished. I can also provide testimony that Riley never left the house. Dr. Blackwell looked uncomfortable. Parents often believe their children are home when they've actually snuck out. I'm not just any parent, I said quietly. I'm a trained investigator with the State Department of Education. I notice things, and I'm telling you with absolute certainty that Riley was home last night. There was a long silence. Dr. Blackwell glanced toward her office, where I could now see another woman sitting in one of the chairs. Perhaps we should all sit down and discuss this calmly. I've asked Vice Principal Sharon Reeves to join us, as well as Madison's parents. The meeting was a disaster from the start. We filed into Dr. Blackwell's office, a spacious room with cherrywood furniture and diplomas covering one wall. Vice Principal Reeves was there, a thin woman in her late 40s with nervous energy. Also present were David and Patricia Thorne, Madison's parents, and Madison herself. Madison was 17, blonde, pretty in the way that came from expensive skincare and regular salon visits. She wore designer jeans and carried a luxury handbag that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Her parents had the same polished, affluent appearance. David Thorne was a real estate developer who'd built half the subdivision where Riverside Academy was located. Patricia sat on the school board. I recognized them both from various school functions, though we'd never spoken directly. Madison looked at Riley with something like satisfaction in her eyes, and I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't the expression of someone who'd reluctantly reported a rule violation. This was someone who was enjoying another person's distress. Dr. Blackwell started the meeting with a recap of the situation. Last night, sometime between 8 and 10 p.m., someone vandalized our gymnasium with spray paint. The damage is extensive. This morning, Madison came forward and reported that she'd seen Riley Cooper in the gym around 9 p.m. with spray paint cans. We brought Riley in to discuss the situation, and she's denying the allegations. However, given Madison's credibility and the specific details she provided, we're moving forward with a 3-week suspension pending a full investigation. I kept my voice level. What was Madison doing at school at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night? Madison answered before Dr. Blackwell could speak. I was here for National Honor Society. We had a meeting that ran until 8:30, and I forgot my calculus textbook in my locker. I went back inside to get it and heard noise coming from the gym. When I looked in, I saw Riley with the spray paint. The National Honor Society meeting, I said. Who else attended? Can anyone verify you were here? Patricia Thorne bristled. Are you suggesting my daughter is lying? I'm suggesting that if we're going to rely solely on witness testimony, we should verify that testimony. It's basic investigative procedure. Dr. Blackwell intervened. I can confirm that the NHS meeting took place. Several students and the faculty advisor, Mrs. Chen, she caught herself. Mrs. Lang can verify Madison's presence. And after the meeting, did anyone see Madison return to the building to get her textbook? Did any security footage capture her re-entering? Dr. Blackwell shifted uncomfortably. As I mentioned, we're experiencing technical difficulties with our security system. Several cameras have been offline for the past week. How convenient, I said. The cameras in the gym don't work, and apparently neither do the cameras that would have captured Madison's whereabouts. So we have 2 students, both claiming different things, with no physical evidence to support either version. David Thorne leaned forward, his expression hardening. Miss Hayes, I understand you're protective of your daughter, but Madison has never lied to us. She's an exemplary student with a spotless record. If she says she saw Riley vandalizing the gym, then that's what happened. Perhaps instead of attacking Madison's credibility, you should consider whether your daughter might not be as honest as you think. I met his eyes. Mr. Thorne, I've spent 15 years investigating fraud and deception. I've interviewed hundreds of witnesses, reviewed thousands of documents, and testified in federal court. I know how to assess credibility, and I know my daughter. She was home last night. She didn't vandalize anything. Riley spoke up, her voice small but steady. Can I ask Madison something? Dr. Blackwell hesitated, then nodded. Riley turned to Madison. You said you saw me spray painting the gym walls at 9 p.m. What was I wearing? You mentioned the soccer sweatshirt, but what else? Madison didn't miss a beat. The green sweatshirt, black leggings, white sneakers. Your hair was in a ponytail. Riley looked at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her phone, scrolling through her photos. She turned the screen toward the room. This is what I was wearing last night. I took this selfie at 8:45 p.m. while we were watching the documentary, because I was texting my friend about the case we were watching. The photo showed Riley on our couch, wearing gray sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt from a concert she'd attended last summer. Her hair was down, not in a ponytail. The timestamp in the corner read 8:45 p.m., and the TV in the background clearly showed the documentary we'd been watching. Madison's face didn't change, but her mother's expression tightened. Photos can be manipulated, Patricia said. Timestamps can be altered. Not these, I said. These photos are backed up automatically to the cloud with metadata including time, date, and GPS location. The metadata can be verified by a digital forensics expert, which I happen to have access to through my office. Would you like me to request that verification? The room went quiet. Dr. Blackwell cleared her throat. I think perhaps we're getting ahead of ourselves. Madison, is it possible you were mistaken about what Riley was wearing? Madison shook her head. I know what I saw. She must have changed clothes after I saw her. In the 9 minutes between 8:45, when Riley took that photo at home, and 9 o'clock, when you claim you saw her at school, I asked. She would have had to drive here, which is a 15-minute trip from our house, sneak into the gym, start vandalizing, all while somehow traveling backward in time. David Thorne stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. My daughter saw what she saw. Perhaps Riley wasn't working alone. Perhaps the real vandal was wearing similar clothing and Madison made an honest mistake in identification. Either way, someone needs to be held accountable for the damage, and Riley is the suspect Madison identified. Based on faulty identification, I said. Madison claims to have seen Riley in specific clothing that Riley demonstrably was not wearing. That makes Madison's testimony unreliable at best, and fabricated at worst. How dare you, Patricia Thorne hissed. My daughter is not a liar. Then she's mistaken, I said flatly, which means the suspension has no factual basis and needs to be reversed immediately. Dr. Blackwell raised her hands. I think we need to take a step back. Ms. Hayes, I understand your concerns, but we can't simply ignore Madison's report. I'm going to suspend Riley pending further investigation. If evidence emerges that exonerates her, we'll reverse the suspension and restore her record. But until then, the suspension stands. I felt my hands curl into fists. You're going to punish my daughter based on uncorroborated testimony that's already been contradicted by physical evidence? That's not how this works, Dr. Blackwell. That's my decision, she said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. And as principal, I have the authority to make it. Riley will be suspended for 3 weeks, beginning immediately. She's not to be on school property during that time. I stood up. Fine, but I want to see the vandalism myself. I want to photograph the damage, review the scene, and conduct my own investigation. If you're going to accuse my daughter of a crime, I'm going to investigate it properly. Dr. Blackwell hesitated. That's not really necessary. It absolutely is necessary. You're making a serious accusation that will go on Riley's permanent record and could affect her college applications. I have every right to examine the evidence. Unless you'd prefer I involve the local police and have them conduct an official investigation? Because vandalism of this scale is criminal damage to property, which means this is a criminal matter, not just a school discipline issue. The threat hung in the air. Dr. Blackwell's face tightened, but she nodded. Fine, I'll have Mr. Kowalski, our facilities manager, show you the gymnasium. She looked at the Thornes. Thank you for coming. Madison, you can return to class. As the Thornes left, Madison glanced back at Riley with that same satisfied smile, and I made a mental note. This wasn't about justice or truth. This was personal. Riley and I followed Dr. Blackwell and Carl Kowalski, the facilities manager, down the hallway toward the gymnasium. Kowalski was in his 60s, had worked at Riverside for 20 years, and looked genuinely distressed by the vandalism. I've never seen anything like this in all my time here, he said as he unlocked the gym doors. Whoever did it really went to town. He pushed the doors open and I stepped inside. The damage was extensive. The gym walls, which had been pristine white, were now covered in spray-painted graffiti. Profanity, crude drawings, aggressive symbols. The words "Riverside sucks" were sprayed across one wall in dripping red letters 3 feet high. On another wall, someone had painted "Admin == thieves" in black. That was interesting. Not typical teenage rebellion. That was specific. That was accusatory. I pulled out my phone and started photographing everything. The graffiti, the spray paint patterns, the locations. I walked the perimeter of the gym, looking for details. Mr. Kowalski, when did you discover this? This morning, around 7 a.m., I came in early to set up for the pep rally scheduled for today. Walked in and nearly had a heart attack. And the security cameras? Been malfunctioning for about a week. I put in work orders to get them fixed, but you know how it is with the budget. Things take time. I looked up at the cameras mounted in the corners of the gym. 4 cameras, all with their indicator lights dark. Dead. All 4 cameras failed simultaneously. Kowalski shifted uncomfortably. I noticed them going out one by one over the past week. First one on Monday, then another on Wednesday, third one on Friday, and the last one on Monday this week. I reported each one. To whom? To the main office. Mrs. Simmons handles the maintenance requests. I photographed the cameras, then moved back to the graffiti. The spray paint was still fresh, the smell of aerosol strong in the air. Whoever had done this had used multiple colors: red, black, blue, silver. I knelt down near one of the walls and examined the paint more closely. The patterns were interesting. Whoever had done this had worked quickly but not carelessly. The letters were large and deliberate. This wasn't random tagging. This was someone making a statement. And that statement was, admin =sign thieves. I stood up and looked at Dr. Blackwell. Has there been any recent controversy with the administration? Any issues that might make someone angry enough to do this? She stiffened. Nothing out of the ordinary. Normal school operations. Nothing at all? She hesitated. There's always some level of student dissatisfaction with various policies. Dress code enforcement, parking permits, that sort of thing. Nothing that would lead to this. I didn't believe her. Something in her tone was off, defensive. But I filed it away and continued documenting the scene. After 20 minutes, I had hundreds of photos and several observations. First, the vandalism had been done by someone tall enough to reach the upper portions of the wall without a ladder, or someone who'd brought a ladder and removed it afterward. Second, the paint cans would have been heavy and bulky. Carrying multiple colors would have been conspicuous. Third, the message, admin =sign thieves, suggested someone with specific grievances against the administration. Riley was 5'4" and had no grievances against anyone. She was well-liked, focused on academics and soccer, and had never expressed any political opinions about school administration. This wasn't her style, her message, or her method. I finished photographing and turned to Dr. Blackwell. I need a list of all students who have been disciplined by the administration in the past 6 months. I also need to know if there have been any recent budget issues, funding controversies, or personnel problems. Dr. Blackwell's expression hardened. That's confidential information. I can't share student discipline records or internal administrative matters with you. I'm the chief investigator for the State Department of Education, I said. I have clearance to review any and all educational records as part of an official investigation. Would you like me to make this an official investigation? The color drained from her face again. That won't be necessary. I'll see what I can provide. We returned to the main office and Dr. Blackwell retreated to her office, closing the door firmly behind her. I turned to Riley, who'd been silent through the whole gym inspection. Come on, let's go home. In the car, Riley finally broke down. She cried hard, the kind of crying that comes from fear and injustice and helplessness. Everyone's going to think I did it. Madison's already texting people. Her friends are posting about it on social media. They're calling me a vandal and a liar. I gripped the steering wheel. We're going to prove you didn't do it. I promise you that. How? They don't care about the truth. Madison's dad is on the school board. Her family donates thousands of dollars to the school. Nobody's going to believe me over her. She was probably right about the power dynamics, but she was wrong about one thing. I believed her, and I had resources they couldn't imagine. That evening, I made several phone calls. First, I called my colleague David Wu, a digital forensics specialist with the State Attorney General's office. I explained the situation and asked him to verify the metadata on Riley's photo. He agreed to examine it pro bono as a favor. Second, I called an attorney friend, Jennifer Klein, who specialized in education law. She'd handled several student rights cases and was known for being aggressive when schools overstepped their authority. I filled her in on the suspension and the lack of evidence. They suspended her based solely on witness testimony that's been contradicted by photographic evidence, Jennifer said, her voice sharp. That's actionable. I can file an injunction tomorrow morning to prevent the suspension from going into effect while we challenge it. Do it, I said. I want this fight public. I want the school board to see exactly what's happening. Third, I called Russell Dean, an investigator I'd worked with on several education fraud cases. Russell was retired FBI, now did private investigation work, and was one of the best at uncovering financial irregularities. Russell, I need you to look into Riverside Academy's finances. Specifically, anything involving the administration, budget allocations, construction projects, and donor relationships. Focus on the past 2 years. Looking for anything in particular? He asked. Not sure yet, but someone spray-painted admin =sign thieves on the gym walls. That's specific. That's not random teenage angst. Someone knows something and they're angry about it. Russell was quiet for a moment. You think there's actual fraud? I think something's wrong, and I think someone's trying to cover it up by framing Riley. I'll start digging tomorrow, he said. Give me 3 days. That night, I sat with Riley and went through everything methodically. Tell me everything you know about Madison Thorne. Have you had any conflicts with her? Any reason she'd want to hurt you? Riley thought for a long time. We're not friends. We don't really run in the same circles. She's popular, hangs out with the wealthy kids. I'm more focused on soccer and debate, but we've never had a fight or anything. Have you ever competed for anything? Academic awards, sports, college applications? Not really. She's a senior, I'm a junior. Different grade, different classes. The only thing... She trailed off. What? There's this scholarship, the Riverside Excellence Award. It's a full ride to any state university, given to one student every year based on academics, athletics, and community service. It's worth like $120,000 over 4 years. Madison's been assumed to be the winner this year since she's senior class president and has a 4.0 GPA. But last month, the guidance counselor told me I should apply for it too. She said even though I'm a junior, I have a really strong application, and they sometimes award it early to exceptional candidates. My instincts prickled. Did Madison know you were applying? I don't know. Maybe? The applications were due 2 weeks ago. The winner gets announced next month. Money. There it was. Not just a scholarship, but a prestigious, lucrative scholarship that Madison had assumed was hers. If Riley was a serious competitor, if Riley might actually win. Who makes the decision on the scholarship? I asked. A committee. The principal, vice principal, 2 school board members, and a representative from the Scholarship Foundation. They review applications and interview finalists. Is Dr. Blackwell on the committee? Yeah, she's the chair. Of course she was. I spent the next morning making more calls. First to the Scholarship Foundation, a nonprofit established by a wealthy Riverside alumnus. I identified myself as Chief Investigator Hayes and asked about the current year's selection process. The foundation director, a man named Philip Hargrove, was initially cautious but opened up when I explained I was conducting an investigation into potential irregularities. We've actually had some concerns this year, he admitted. The committee has been unusually secretive about the finalist pool. Normally they share candidate information with us early in the process, but this year they've been tight-lipped. Do you know who the finalists are? Not officially, but I've heard through back channels that there are 2 strong candidates, Madison Thorne and Riley Cooper. I paused. Wait, is Riley your daughter? Yes. I see. Well, I can tell you that from our perspective, Riley's application was exceptional. Her academic record, her community service hours, her essay about educational equity, it was one of the strongest applications I've seen in years. Madison's application was also strong, but more conventional. Both are qualified, but Riley stood out. Has anyone from the school committee contacted you recently about the selection? Dr. Blackwell called me last week. She wanted to know if there were any disqualifying factors that would prevent a student from winning. I told her no, as long as the student maintained good standing and had no disciplinary issues. The pieces clicked together in my mind with sickening clarity. Riley was about to win the scholarship. Dr. Blackwell knew it. Madison's parents knew it. And if Riley suddenly had a 3-week suspension for vandalism on her record, she'd be disqualified. The school board would never award a scholarship to a vandal. Madison would win by default. This wasn't about vandalism at all. This was about eliminating competition for a $120,000 scholarship. I thanked Philip Hargrove and ended the call, my hands shaking with anger. They'd framed my daughter. Deliberately. Systematically. And they'd assumed they could get away with it because they controlled the process. They'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was an investigator whose entire career was built on exposing exactly this kind of corruption. Jennifer Klein filed the injunction Friday morning in county court. By noon, we had a hearing scheduled for Monday morning at 9 a.m. The school district's attorney, Thomas Brennan, filed a response arguing that the principal had discretion in student discipline matters, and that the suspension was appropriate based on the witness testimony. But Jennifer's filing included Riley's alibi photo with verified metadata from David Wu, showing conclusively that Riley had been home when the vandalism occurred. It also included a detailed affidavit from me about my investigative credentials, and my certainty that Riley had been home that night. Over the weekend, Russell Dean called with preliminary findings. Victoria, you're not going to believe what I found. Try me. Riverside Academy received an $18 million budget allocation 3 years ago for the new athletic facility. Construction went over budget, as you know. But what you don't know is that there were multiple change orders and cost overruns that weren't properly documented. The final cost was closer to $22 million. Where did the extra $4 million come from? That's the interesting part. It came from a discretionary fund controlled by the school board. But here's where it gets weird. The primary contractor for the athletic facility was Thorne Development Corporation, David Thorne's company. My stomach dropped. Madison's father built the gym? More than that, I dug into the change orders. Most of them were approved by Dr. Blackwell without competitive bidding, in violation of state procurement laws. And several of the change orders were for work that was never actually performed. Phantom invoices paid directly to Thorne Development. How much? At least $2 million in fraudulent billing. Probably more, but I'd need access to the actual construction records to verify. So David Thorne defrauded the school district of $2 million, with Dr. Blackwell's approval and oversight. It looks that way. And there's more. Patricia Thorne, as a school board member, should have recused herself from any votes involving her husband's company. But according to meeting minutes I obtained through public records requests, she not only voted on the athletic facility contract, she was one of the strongest advocates for approving the change orders. This wasn't just about a scholarship anymore. This was about covering up millions of dollars in fraud. If Riley won the scholarship and became more prominent in school activities, if she started asking questions or noticing irregularities, she might stumble onto the same evidence Russell had found. Better to eliminate her now by destroying her reputation and ensuring she'd never be in a position to threaten them. Russell, I need you to document everything. Every change order, every invoice, every board vote. I'm going to need this evidence for court. Already on it. I'll have a full report by Monday morning. I spent the rest of the weekend preparing. Jennifer and I built our case not just around Riley's innocence, but around the larger pattern of corruption at Riverside Academy. We documented the scholarship timeline, the construction fraud, the conflict of interest, and the suspicious timing of Madison's accusation. Monday morning at 8:30 a.m., we arrived at the county courthouse. Riley was nervous, wearing a conservative dress and looking younger than 16. Jennifer carried a briefcase full of documentation. I wore my official identification badge, making it clear I was testifying not just as a mother, but as a state investigator. The hearing was in Judge Michael Brennan's courtroom. He was 62, had been on the bench for 18 years, and had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and impatience with procedural games. Dr. Blackwell arrived with the district attorney, Thomas Brennan, no relation to the judge, and Vice Principal Reeves. The Thornes were also there, sitting in the gallery, looking confident. The judge called the hearing to order at 9:02 a.m. This is a preliminary hearing on an injunction to prevent a student suspension. Ms. Klein, you're representing the student? Yes, Your Honor. Riley Cooper, age 16, junior at Riverside Academy. She's been suspended for 3 weeks based on uncorroborated witness testimony that we can prove is false. Mr. Brennan, you're representing the school district? Yes, Your Honor. We maintain that the principal acted within her discretion based on credible witness reports. Judge Brennan looked at both attorneys. This is unusual. Student suspensions are typically handled through administrative appeals, not court injunctions. Why are we here? Jennifer stood. Your Honor, we believe this suspension is part of a larger pattern of corruption and fraud at Riverside Academy. The false accusation against Riley Cooper was made to disqualify her from a competitive scholarship worth $120,000, and we have evidence suggesting the accusation was orchestrated by individuals with both financial and personal motives to harm Riley's academic standing. The courtroom went silent. Dr. Blackwell's face turned white. David Thorne stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, this is slander. Judge Brennan banged his gavel. Sit down, Mr. Thorne. You're not a party to this proceeding. He looked at Jennifer. Those are serious allegations, Miss Klein. I hope you have evidence to support them. We do, Your Honor. Substantial evidence. For the next hour, Jennifer systematically presented our case. She started with Riley's alibi, showing the time-stamped photo that proved Riley had been home when the vandalism occurred. David Wu testified via video conference about the metadata verification, confirming the photo was authentic and unaltered. Then Jennifer presented the scholarship timeline, showing that Riley was a finalist for the Riverside Excellence Award and that Madison Thorne was her primary competition. Philip Hargrove from the Scholarship Foundation testified that Riley's application was exceptionally strong and that Dr. Blackwell had specifically asked about disqualifying factors just days before Riley was accused of vandalism. Then came Russell Dean's testimony. He laid out the construction fraud in methodical detail, the no-bid change orders, the phantom invoices, the $2 million paid to Thorne Development for work that was never performed. He presented bank records showing money flowing from the school district's discretionary fund to Thorne Development accounts. He showed board meeting minutes where Patricia Thorne had voted on contracts benefiting her husband's company without recusing herself. The courtroom was dead silent. Judge Brennan's expression grew darker with each revelation. When Russell finished, the judge turned to Counselor. Counselor, does your client have a response to these allegations? The district attorney looked shell-shocked. Your Honor, I was not aware of any of this. I was briefed solely on the student suspension issue. If there are financial irregularities, that's a separate matter that should be investigated by appropriate authorities. It's being investigated right now, I said, standing. Your Honor, I'm Victoria Hayes, Chief Investigator for the State Department of Education. Based on the evidence presented here today, I'm opening a formal investigation into financial fraud at Riverside Academy. I'll be requesting subpoenas for all financial records, construction documents, and communications between Dr. Blackwell and the Thorne family. Judge Brennan nodded. Ms. Hayes, you have my full support. As for this hearing, I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff. The suspension of Riley Cooper is hereby vacated immediately. Furthermore, I'm ordering the school district to expunge any record of this suspension from Riley's file and to issue a formal apology. Ms. Klein, please prepare an order to that effect. Yes, Your Honor. The judge looked at Dr. Blackwell. Dr. Blackwell, You should know that I'm referring this matter to the State Attorney General for criminal investigation. Based on what I've heard today, there's probable cause to believe multiple laws were violated, including procurement fraud, conflict of interest violations, and possibly conspiracy to defraud. Dr. Blackwell looked like she might faint. David Thorne was already on his phone, presumably calling his own attorney. The hearing ended at 11:15 a.m. Outside the courtroom, reporters were waiting. Jennifer had made sure to notify the local media about the hearing. Riley and I walked past them without comment, but Jennifer gave a brief statement about the court's ruling and the vindication of Riley's innocence. By that afternoon, the story was everywhere. Riverside Academy scandal. Principal accused of framing student to cover up fraud. School board member's husband allegedly embezzled millions in construction scheme. Investigator's daughter falsely accused in scholarship conspiracy. The school board held an emergency meeting that evening and placed Dr. Blackwell on administrative leave pending investigation. Patricia Thorne resigned from the school board. David Thorne's company was immediately removed from all active school district contracts. Within a week, the State Attorney General's office had opened a full criminal investigation. Subpoenas were issued for all financial records, emails, and communications. Forensic accountants descended on Riverside Academy's business office like a swarm of locusts. The investigation uncovered even more fraud than Russell had initially found. Over a 3-year period, the Thornes had embezzled nearly $3.8 million from the school district through fraudulent construction invoices, inflated change orders, and kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. Dr. Blackwell had received $200,000 in consulting payments from Thorne Development, paid into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. She'd approved every fraudulent invoice, bypassed every safeguard, and used her authority as principal to shield the scheme from oversight. The vandalism, it turned out, had been committed by a student named Justin Crawford, a senior who'd discovered the fraud while working as a student aide in the business office. He'd spray-painted admin = sign thieves as a desperate attempt to expose what he'd found. But when Dr. Blackwell discovered his graffiti, she'd realized it could be used to her advantage. If she could blame the vandalism on Riley and get her suspended, Riley would be disqualified from the scholarship, Madison would win, and the Thorne family would have even more leverage to keep people quiet. Madison had been instructed by her parents to falsely identify Riley as the vandal. She'd practiced the lie, rehearsed the details about clothing and timing, and delivered her false testimony with confidence. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd described clothing that Riley wasn't actually wearing, and she'd been caught in a lie by time-stamped evidence she didn't know existed. Justin Crawford came forward after the scandal broke, admitting to the vandalism and explaining why he'd done it. He turned over documents he'd copied from the business office, providing even more evidence of the fraud. The criminal charges came down in March. Dr. Catherine Blackwell was charged with fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to defraud, and witness tampering. She faced up to 20 years in prison. David Thorne was charged with fraud, bribery, and money laundering. He faced up to 30 years. Patricia Thorne was charged with conflict of interest violations and conspiracy. She faced up to 10 years. Madison Thorne, as a minor who'd been coerced by her parents, was offered a plea deal, testify truthfully against her parents in exchange for probation and mandatory community service. She took it. The trials were scheduled for the following fall. In the meantime, Riverside Academy underwent a complete administrative overhaul. Dr. Blackwell was replaced by an interim principal with instructions to implement comprehensive financial controls and transparency measures. The school board was expanded and diversified to prevent future corruption. The Riverside Excellence Scholarship was awarded to Riley in May at a special ceremony. She accepted it with grace, giving a speech about integrity, truth, and the importance of speaking up even when it's difficult. Justin Crawford, who'd risked his own future to expose corruption, received a special commendation from the school board and a recommendation letter from the State Attorney General for his college applications. Riley and I attended the Blackwell trial in September. I sat in the gallery and watched as prosecutors laid out the evidence of fraud and corruption. Dr. Blackwell's defense attorney tried to argue she'd been manipulated by David Thorne, that she hadn't fully understood the scheme. But the offshore bank account with $200,000 made that argument impossible to sustain. The jury convicted her on all counts. She was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. David Thorne received 23 years. Patricia Thorne received 8 years. Their assets were seized to repay the school district, though they'd already spent or hidden much of the money. Madison Thorne finished her senior year at a different school, her reputation destroyed, her college acceptances rescinded. She eventually attended community college under a different name. Riley thrived. She graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA, earned her scholarship to the state university, and majored in criminal justice with plans to follow in my footsteps as an investigator. 2 years after the scandal, I sat in a college auditorium watching Riley receive an award for academic excellence. She'd maintained her scholarship, joined the university's debate team, and volunteered with an organization that helps students navigate unfair school discipline procedures. During her acceptance speech, she mentioned the false accusation, the fear she'd felt, and how it had shaped her commitment to justice. "My mom taught me that the truth matters," she said. "That evidence matters. That we can't let powerful people abuse their positions to hurt the vulnerable. And she taught me that sometimes the system works, if you're willing to fight for it." I watched her speak. This strong, brilliant young woman who'd survived an attempt to destroy her future, and I felt pride so intense it hurt. After the ceremony, Riley found me in the crowd and hugged me tight. "Thank you, Mom, for believing me, for fighting for me." "Always," I said. "That's what mothers do." We walked out of the auditorium together, into the bright afternoon sun, and I thought about Dr. Blackwell and the thorns sitting in their prison cells, and about justice finally, thoroughly, completely served. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.